All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. Glad I got to go on the air. It is a Wednesday, and I start late. I've been starting late on some Wednesdays, some Thursdays because of my volunteer work for Code Pink, trying to promote peace rather than endless war. We had an interesting day today. I'm going to really, start. Let's start in the Middle East. And actually, I was working on an issue that's relevant to the Middle East, but not Israel directly, but rather Syria, and calling for the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Syria. Apparently, we have about 2,000 troops. That's what Rand Paul's office told us. 2,000 U.S. troops in Syria, and they're a target. And if anything, they're making us less safe by being there. Paul has called, as he has in the past, for those troops to be withdrawn. And we're hoping to rally support for his resolution that he has, in fact, submitted from Democrats and Republicans, and see whether Trump agrees. It wouldn't be a huge shock if Trump did agree to pull some of those troops out. He has certainly, on occasion, shown sympathy towards the isolationist view. And it's not perfect. The U.S. has broken a lot of cookie jars around the world. Our foreign policy has been incredibly destructive, and isolationism seems to suggest, or does reflect a view that, hey, we can, be elephants trampling out countries, practicing regime change, and then we'll just all, close up shop, bring everything home, and leave you to clean up the broken pieces. I don't think that's the right attitude. I think the right attitude should be America has a real obligation to help make things better. Sadly, we've made things worse, much, 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 much worse in recent years. And yes, bringing troops home is better than leaving them there, but isolationism isn't the solution either. The solution has to be working in the United Nations, working with allies and adversaries to improve the quality of life for poor, struggling, and working people worldwide, and to tamp down international and intranational tensions. We'll get to that in just a moment, but I do want to, again, center the situation in Gaza, as I have for well over a year. And the news not so awful. This is from Al Jazeera today, as Israel-Hamas ceasefire holds over 500,000 return to northern Gaza. So that is definitely good news as far as it goes. And if you're wondering the dateline, that is dateline today from Al Jazeera. At least for now, at least at this time, the Palestinian people believe, I guess, that it's safe to go back to their homes in northern Gaza. That may or may not remain the case, and we've got mixed signals for sure from the Trump administration and whether it will promote security for the Palestinians. But mixed signals may be better than what we had before from Harris Biden, which was, you're on your own. All right, 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646. And yeah, you want more, do you call that a Chiron? I'm not really sure. Join Halitics on Facebook. Would love to see you there. It's really easy if you're on your Facebook page. Just type Halitics into the search engine. We also hope that you'll subscribe now. I'm trying to get all my little, promotions, my little promotional gifts and the like up there. So, and then the last one is that like button. Don't forget, click like. And every time I do a fade to get that like button on, you also see my story there appear and disappear. All right, Halitics, 240-242-5646. And yeah, I forgot. Well, I was really scrambling here. I was downtown for a good part of the day down on Capitol. It is so nice. By the way, it is just like the irony there, the paradox, I guess is the right word. I'm not really sure. But Capitol Hill is really nice. It's a really nice area, lots of trees. It's great for walking. It's really not even that hard to park. And the office buildings for both the senators and Congress are very nice. Now, I think they're classic. I love old school. There's marble hallways. These aren't like these sort of gleaming glass and steel type towers, although the Senate Hart office building actually is more modern, but mostly it's probably these buildings are 100 years old, I'm guessing, or at least date back to the Depression. I haven't really looked into it. But they're very, very nice, and they're classic. But you think, and what I was thinking as I was walking through them is it would be so nice to have great pride in our elected representatives and to feel as though this is a government that's working for the people and is by the people. But that just isn't the case. It's a government. It's two parties that are by and for the billionaire class. And that's incredibly unfortunate. It's incredibly sad. And it's led to tremendous amount of totally avoidable pain around the world and at home because our lawmakers aren't acting in our best interest, because so often they're compromised by greed, by money, by corruption. It's just terrible. Today's theme, why is the Democratic Party in the wilderness? Why is it struggling? We see even Trump's approval ratings are actually, there's some, debate, and I guess it depends on which poll, but they're up. They're better than they were in his first term. Meanwhile, Democrats are in the wilderness. Fewer people, I believe, identify as Democrats now even than Republicans. The youth vote, which was something Democrats could consistently count on, is now leaving, as is the brown vote and many black men as well. So this is a terrible situation if you're a Democrat. And frankly, even me, and I guess I am a Democrat, I don't want to see the Republicans be in charge. Not that I want the Democrats either, but I want to have a robust competition between the parties for your vote. And we haven't seen that. We haven't, for my vote, we haven't had that. That's why I champion the Greens. But specifically, why are the Democrats struggling? And I think a big reason is they're not leading. People don't even know what it means to be a Democrat. There isn't any policy, right? There isn't any program. Certainly not anything that we would say is truly pro-people that's associated with the Democratic Party. Even if you were to say, well, maybe the Green New Deal. But is it? Plenty of, you had Democrats torpedo the Green New Deal, Manchin and Sinema. You had a president, the last Democratic president, he just left office, and his vice president who supported fracking. So I don't, see any issue, certainly no peace is certainly not something you would associate with the Democratic Party or even with specific members. Just a few on the far left fringes, I suppose. You could say, I think it's fair to say Rashid Tlaib certainly is associated with the rights of Palestinians, but that's not with freeing Palestine, but that's certainly not a Democratic Party policy by any means. In fact, it's not the policy of the party. So that's a huge problem for this party. They don't stand for anything. And even the few that you would point to and say, well, they're somewhat progressive, they're not really leaders either, except for Bernie, and Bernie's an independent. So I'm downtown today. I'm pushing for this Senate Joint Resolution 6 introduced by Republican Rand Paul. And I get it. He's an independent. He's an anti-interventionist. He stands out from the rest of his party, much as a Tlaib or a Ilhan Omar does. That said, his views aren't completely anathema in this administration. As I indicated, there's a real anti-interventionist streak within the Trump administration and in Trump himself. So if you were going to say which is the pro-peace party, I don't think you have an answer. You can't say it's the Democrats in any way. They're not a pro-peace party, and their membership aren't leading on peace. Whereas look at this, Rand Paul, this is the second time he's introduced this bill. We'll see how many Democrats join him. A joint resolution directing the removal of U.S. armed forces from hostilities in Syria. Well, this is exactly correct. We should be bringing those troops home. There's 2,000 American troops still stationed in Syria. They're a target for terrorists. And there's also a real risk, of course, of more mission creep. They get attacked, the troops are attacked there, and then the response by Congress, by the president is, well, we have to send in more. The response by the Pentagon is we need to go take vengeance on those, Muslims who attacked us, who don't respect our Christian, Judeo-Christian values. So why are Democrats in the wilderness? They're not leading. Here's Rand Paul leading. Even on bad issues, bad policy, which I don't like. I don't want any party to lead in the wrong direction. But the Republicans are even leading in, counterproductive, harmful ways, in many harmful ways. And I think that does. I don't even think, I know it helps them. Here's that poll I was referring to, Dateline today, Quinnipiac poll. Trump begins second term stronger than first six. And here, so policies I don't approve of, but he's leading. 6 in 10 voters approve of sending U.S. troops to the southern border. Trump is doing things. You may not like them. I may not like many of them. But he's doing things. Contrast that with the push me, pull you of the recent Democratic administration. You had tough talk about the border. Harris talked about building a wall. She wanted to build the wall, but at the same time, she excoriated Trump for being, heartless when it came to immigrants. And then she also attacked Trump for not building the wall. So you have no idea. The Democrats never presented in any way a coherent policy on immigration. Now, I don't like the coherent policy of Trump, but at least there's a policy. I can hate that policy. I think it's a reason to vote against him. Just as I thought the Biden-Harris policy of supporting Israeli genocide was a reason to vote against them. But even there, as bad as that policy was, it was kind of a push me, pull you, wishy-washy thing, because there was also, well, Israel's doing really bad things. We need a ceasefire. We need a ceasefire. But they never got a ceasefire. Trump got a ceasefire. I hear all the, it was Biden who negotiated. Yeah, the terms that Biden had outlined 8-9 months ago, but never pushed for, never promoted. So that's why Democrats are in the wilderness. I put Harry Carey on my thumbnail, self-inflicted wounds. An inability to have a platform, a pro-people, pro-worker, and certainly I would say pro-environment platform. That's how you get out of the wilderness. But there's no, I don't see that happening. And we'll show some more examples of this. So Trump on the Middle East, Trump on Israel, there is a ceasefire right now. It's not perfect. It's not holding 100%. Israel's still killing Palestinians, but and Gazans, Palestinians in both the West Bank and in Gaza. But it's been enough to at least lead to the return of many Gazans to their homes, or at least their efforts to get home. Now, I kind of excoriated the Democrats for not having a coherent policy, and you could certainly make the same exact point about Trump when it comes to the Middle East. He seems, with his envoy Witkoff, to be pushing for peace, but then he does things like this, 2,000-pound bombs, right? That's a terrible thing to do. It directly conflicts with his promise, or with his, apparent effort to stop the killing in Gaza. And we'll get into that, into even more detail. Here's why I don't think it hurts him at this point, because there's still a ceasefire. Now, if that changes and Israel starts, full-on genocide, that will not look good for Trump. But even there, you could make the argument, well, Israel had the bombs. Israel bought the bombs. They paid for them. We were promised to deliver them. So I'm just following through on the U.S. promise. But I'm also doing everything I can to keep the killing from recurring. And, I guess if it works, it works. Like Trump said about Ukraine, I just don't want people to die. I hope that is going to be the case. So again, even if you want to say, well, Trump was worse on Israel, Trump is worse on Gaza, he is apparently, certainly seems to be leading. This is from Al Jazeera today, Dateline today. U.S.-Hamas dialogue could shift us from war to peace. So this is what Trump has initiated. His envoy, Steve Witkoff, the guy who was was lauded, praised in the Haaretz pages because he wouldn't take no for an answer from Bibi. Bibi said, hey, I'll see you once I'm done with my Shabbat. And Witkoff's like, no, you'll see me now. I'm not going to wait around. I'm not going to cool my heels. You're the client state. We're giving you bombs. You'll see me when I want to see you, not when you feel like it. And did that message cause Netanyahu to say, okay, let's have a ceasefire? Maybe. It might well have. And this is another message, as awful as as much as I can't stand Elise Stefanik, as bad as she is, as terrible as Huckabee is to be the ambassador to Israel, the actual on-the-ground action by the Trump administration appears at this point to be moving us in the right direction. So Witkoff said last week, yeah, I'll meet with Hamas. I'll talk to Hamas. And I believe that happened today. I believe there were Now, as far as I know, and I may be wrong, please correct me if you know I'm wrong, 240-242-5646. Harris-Biden did not meet with Hamas. They didn't talk to Hamas. If you want peace, you have to talk. Trump has reached out to Putin to talk to Putin. That hasn't yet borne fruit. But it may. If you don't talk, you will not get peace. So, the hope here is that there really is going to be an ongoing, sincere effort to come up with a mutual solution to this problem. Now, if you read this paragraph, I didn't give you the whole article. It's really interesting from Al Jazeera, U.S.-Hamas meeting, right, that there could be a mutual meeting. It's really interesting. But if you read just this paragraph here, the statements by Hamas and Witkoff mean that they're probably going to test the water to prevent Israel from going to war with Iran. which would be bad news for everybody. That's good, right? That's what we want. We want a foreign policy in this country that says, hey, war with Iran's a bad thing. Now, again, Trump, hardly some kind of paragon, right? I mean, he killed, I can't remember the name of the senior Iranian general, which was incredibly destabilizing. But I welcome talks. I welcome negotiation. I welcome an end to the killing. And that's where Trump is leading. And in a good direction. At least it certainly appears. Now, that may change. Now, I'm going to get to some of the really bad things he's doing, too. This is not some sort of encomium to Trump. This is to explain why the Democrats are failing, why the Democrats are not going to come out of the wilderness unless and until they demonstrate true leadership in areas that will make life better for the American people. And they have not done that to date. In this century, in this millennium, they have, I believe, largely failed at that. So Trump's popularity, I mentioned the story yesterday, even as much as I decry the abuse of immigrants, it's so wrong. But this is what a lot of Americans want. He's going in a direction that Americans want, and he's doing it loudly, visibly. That's not where I want Democrats to go. But if Democrats want to regain power, want that trifecta, want to be popular, then what they need to do is come up with policies that are broadly popular and to lead in them, lead on those. Now, obviously, I don't think those policies should be deporting people. I don't think those policies should be, going after trans people or DEI or destroying DEI or just gutting government agencies. But I can understand why many Americans don't really care. Why Americans are saying, no, you know what? I don't want to hear about that. Those government programs haven't made my life better. I'm not in a better place than I was 50, 60 years ago. My family isn't. My grandparents were doing so much better relatively than I am now. Democrats have just simply failed to acknowledge that or fight for working people. So Trump, with his right-wing demagoguery, is certainly scapegoating immigrants, is successful. Now, I don't think the pro-peace line is demagoguery. I hope it happens. One of the ways I think the media, and I mean, Trump said he wants to clean out Gaza, and that's a bad thing, no question. But if you read the art from Haaretz, again, this is Israeli newspaper, so I'm not picking and choosing some right-wing source. This is a progressive, or as progressive as it gets in Israel. And what they're reporting, Trump wants Jordan and Egypt to take in Palestinians from Gaza. So this is the whole idea he was going to clean out Gaza. And a lot of people took that to mean, or, used that as an argument that he wants the full genocide that Israel was promoting. And I certainly get that, why you would think that. But his actual view is, I want Egypt to, what he said is, I want Egypt to take Palestinian, he says, people. I want Jordan to take people. We're talking about 1.5 million, and we just clean that whole thing, and say it's over. And you can understand why I would say that, because we've seen how devastated, how completely razed to the ground the Bibi, Harris, Biden sinister alliance left Gaza. So you can understand why he'd say, hey, we got to get those people out of there. But he's not saying kill them. He's not saying put them in the wilderness. He's saying move them to Egypt and Jordan, which I do not think is a great solution by any means, but people have to go somewhere. And if they can't live there, if it's just a breeding ground for cholera, for disease, the only way to maintain people there is by constant truck supplies, which it would appear to be, then there's an argument for what Trump is saying. Hey, let's move them into Egypt, Jordan. So Haaretz explores this in great detail. And I really found this very interesting, what they had to say about this argument by Trump. Well, we're going to clean it out. The people there can be relocated to Jordan and Egypt. So Haaretz says, hey, this isn't going to be great for Jordan and Egypt aren't going to like it. Whatever they choose to do, this discussion could poison Israel's relations with these neighboring countries. Maybe, I don't know. I guess, I don't know why it would necessarily I think it would poison it depending on how it's implemented. And again, we'll get into the details in a moment. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm not promoting it. What I'm trying to say is this is not ongoing genocide. It could be ongoing ethnic cleansing, where you cleanse the region that is Gaza of Palestinians, and you make it, condos and beachfront hotels, which is what people suspect Trump wants and what his, son-in-law Kushner wants. And maybe that's true, and I wouldn't be shocked, and it certainly wouldn't be a good thing. Don't forget, click like when you click subscribe. Don't forget to click like when you click subscribe. Yeah, I wish I could do that transition without losing the slide. It's sort of weird. I guess because it's on the internet. Maybe that's why. But the newspaper Haaretz provides an option, and that a way that relocation of Gazans into Egypt and Jordan could work out to not be the most awful thing in the world. And this is what they have to say. And let me just show, because this is the only way I could see this being legit, but they do propose this, is what if, because Egypt and Jordan are American allies, and they're not going to want to say no to the U.S. And what the newspaper is saying is, one thing that the two countries, Egypt and Jordan, could say to Trump is, all right, we'll take in those Gazans, but only with a U.S.-Israeli commitment to allow their return to Gaza when reconstruction is completed. And that has to be done within a defined timeline, and there has to be a diplomatic package that includes the end of the war or slaughter and a withdrawal from Gaza. So if that did happen, wouldn't that be great? If the upshot was Trump says to Israel, look, you completely destroyed Gaza, and now you're going to help rebuild it. We'll get the Palestinians out of there for now, the Gazans, but they're going back, whether you like it or not. Now, is that going to happen? I would be shocked. But it's nice to dream, I suppose. All right, 240-242-5646. And you know what? I'm sort of a little bit frozen. I'm not sure why that is. I had this problem yesterday with Arlen. I don't know whether, I mentioned that I hoped I didn't need a new computer. I don't think I do, but when I see myself, it's not pixelating, it's the herky-jerkiness. Now it's not herky. I see move my head. It's okay. All right, 240-242-5646. I think what Americans want, I think what will help Democrats is a coherent, defined set of policies that Democrats credibly will fight for. I think what Americans don't want is hyperpartisanship. What they don't want is demonization of the other side. They don't want the insults. And if that's true, and I'm very, very confident it is, then the Blue Sky, because this was on Blue Sky, not Twitter, by Jamel Bowie from the New York Times, is remarkably misguided, wrong-headed, counterproductive. So Bowie here praises AOC, the only one expressing actual emotion here, he claims, is AOC. And he has 4 quotes, one from Schumer, one from Hakeem Jeffries, one from Cory Booker, and one from AOC. And quite surprisingly, except not surprising because Bowie supports AOC here, the other 3, none of whom I have any fondness for, have much better takes than AOC's. Hers is the worst. Hers is the one that's least likely to help Democrats come out of the wilderness and is the most likely to foment continuing intra-class warfare. So in response to Trump, here's what, and I'm not saying Booker and Schumer and Jeffries are so great, because they ain't, or even that their tweets are so good, but at least they express concern for the American people. According to Cory Booker, the U.S. spends more on healthcare than any other country. We have the highest rate of maternal mortality. On Maternal Health Awareness Day, I'm committed as ever to pushing our government to act to bring down maternal mortality. All right, it's pretty, it's pretty cold the way he wrote that. It doesn't really show any real concern, but the policy that he's saying, hey, we've got to stop women, moms, from dying when they give birth or before they give birth. Now, he doesn't lay out a roadmap. He doesn't say this is why we need Medicare for all, because he doesn't support Medicare for all. He's corrupted by the for-profit healthcare industry. He's a very problematic in many ways, is Cory Booker. But ultimately, you can sort of glean a policy there that would be popular. So I don't think it's so bad what he says, but I get what the criticism is. Well, it just feels cold. It feels emotionless, feels soulless. It does. That's who Democrats are. But at least he does identify a real problem, does Senator Cory Booker, and say, I'm going to try to address that problem. Hakeem Jeffries, the Congress member from Wall Street and Israel, one of my least favorite, somebody that every Democrat in the House voted for to be their leader. An absolute shame that they did that. But here he points out correctly, I think. There's an argument. Now, J.D. Vance says that's not true. We actually have been trying to lower the cost of living. So this is somewhat partisan. It's a partisan hackery by Jeffries. But he does identify a real problem. It is hard to live in America. It is. The cost of living is very high for working people. He does identify it. And he says, hey, you voted for them to solve this problem, and they're not solving it. And this is a point Bernie made too. So I don't love this tweet or this Blue Sky, whatever you call something on Blue Sky, but I don't think it's terrible. It is somewhat policy oriented, and it does touch on the reality for the American people. It's too expensive to live here. Let's look at what Chuck Schumer had to say about Trump just after he took office, 2 days after he took office on the 21st. One of Trump's executive orders killed policies, or the 20th. He took power on the 20th. He was inaugurated on the 20th. So this was 3 days afterwards. One of Trump's executive orders killed policies that provide a year of postpartum care for moms with Medicaid. How is that anyone's idea of a golden age? All right, he's right. That's a terrible thing that Trump did. And that's going to redound terribly hard on on working people, on blue-collar people who get Medicaid even if they're working. So these tweets, or blue skies, or whatever you want to call them, that Jamelle Bouie, the New York Times hyper-partisan Trump-phobe, identifies, the tweets that he doesn't like, are actually, in my view, pretty reasonable, pretty on point. Working people, you elected Trump to make your life better. He's not reducing, nothing he's doing is talking about keeping prices lower or reducing prices. Nothing, and in fact, what he's doing is going to take away your health care for new moms. And he's also going to take away, and we're going to work. We're the party that wants to reduce, according to Cory Booker, or at least he's going to try to fight maternal deaths, new mom deaths, whatever, postpartum deaths, maternal mortality. That's the term. So I don't know why Bouie has so critical of them. And then look at what he does identify as a good tweet. Or blue sky. This is from AOC. It's ridiculous. One thing about me is that I will fight Nazis until I'm 6 feet in the ground. That's supposed to be a rallying cry? Americans have heard over and over and over again that Trump is a Nazi, that he's a fascist. And it didn't work. You failed. That was your whole shtick. That was the best argument you thought you had against Trump. You were going to convince Republicans with George Erddick's daughter that we can't elect a Nazi, and it went over like a lead balloon. So why does Jamelle Bouie think this is the right response? Because I'll tell you why. Because the New York Times doesn't want to be promoting policies that improve the quality of life for working people. They don't want to take power from the drug companies, allow government to negotiate lower prices because they get money from their sponsors are their advertisers. They're not about government providing services that make life truly better for poor, struggling, and working people. I'm certainly not saying Schumer, Jeffries, and who is the other one that he criticizes? Booker are these exemplars. They're not. They're corporate hacks. They're political, lightweights. They're political heavyweights, but they're policy lightweights. But at least they talk about a policy. At least they talk about the quality of life for working people in their tweets. Blue skies. Oh, AOC, it's just a pure attack on Trump. Let me tell you what. Working people don't care about that. This is what they care about. They care about being able to pay their rent. They care about being able to pay for health care. They care about millions or billions of dollars going overseas and not going into their pockets. AOC's blue sky there sends exactly the wrong message to those voters. It says it's personal. It says that this guy is, he's a fascist. But again, we know that fascism will thrive when people are being exploited, when they're being treated badly, when they're not represented, when they don't feel that government cares about them. So AOC goes completely off the rails there in that. And yet, Jamelle Bouie supports her call. It's ridiculous. So I just put this up because it's also really bad because it's so hypocritical. And she has some words for hypocrites, but I want to just show you what I posted. This is hilarious that Jamelle Bouie thinks this is so great to call Trump a Nazi. AOC came for first Genocide Joe and then Killer Kamala. They're Nazis. They're pro-genocide, pro-Holocaust, new Holocaust. Obviously, she has no problem with unwavering support for genocidal Israel, the direct spiritual descendants of the Nazis. And I ask, Jamel Bowie. Do you, since you're so supportive of that nonsense? Here's another example. By the way, this is not going to be all bashing AOC. She does get one thing really, really right in the past couple, I think when she was on Jon Stewart, which I'll play for you. But just one more. This is her Instagram from a week ago. Again, totally missing the boat. I mean, not from her perspective. This is how she builds up goodwill from the Democrats. Just go after Trump, attack Trump, insult Trump. This is not how you win elections. Ask Jamie Raskin, who spent 2 months trying to impeach Trump, failing at it and only make him more popular. By the way, I will ask Jamie Raskin that next week. I'm going to be at an event where he's scheduled to be the guest speaker. Here is AOC.
All these journalists are like, Congresswoman, are you going to the inauguration? Congresswoman, are you going to the inauguration? Are you going to the inauguration? Let me make myself clear.
By the way, it's so annoying. Let me just make this clear. Why are you moving your head forward and back? Why are you doing that? It's so irritating. Let me play that again just so you can be as annoyed as I am.
All these journalists are like, Congresswoman, are you going to the inauguration? Congresswoman, are you going to the inauguration? Are you going to the inauguration? Let me make myself clear. I don't celebrate rapists. So no, I'm not going to the inauguration tomorrow.
All right, so that's like the world's worst possible take. What she should have said is, I don't celebrate presidents who separate families. I don't celebrate presidents who use the military to round up people who are peaceful, who are hardworking, who are just trying to make a life for themselves in our country. I'm not going to celebrate that. I'm not going to celebrate presidents who are trying to take health care away from millions of hardworking Americans who need Medicaid to make sure that their families are protected if they get sick or injured. No, I'm not going to that person's inauguration. Americans, though, I mean, again, this is something, he's a rapist. He was charged, first of all, he was not convicted of rape, as we've already been through this a million times. So she's misrepresenting what the jury found in the New York case. And second of all, I think most people recognize in that civil case, Trump really wasn't afforded any fair due process. She didn't even identify the date when E. Jean Carroll allegedly was raped. So this is just a remarkably poor politics by AOC. And she's got to know it's true. She says, hey, if you voted for Trump and you voted for me, why'd you do that? She went on TV and said that. And she got response. And people said, well, you care about us, meaning working people, and Trump cares about us, meaning working people. They don't care. His voters don't give a crap about some allegation by an affluent writer that she was raped 30 plus, 29 years ago. Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't care. I'm not saying it doesn't matter in reality. I'm saying that given the way life is in America today, for so many Americans, they have other concerns. But AOC apparently doesn't. Purely hyper-partisan. There's Trump wants to cut, slashing the budgets for the executive agencies, Department of Labor, Department of Education, probably the two that are going to get the biggest, under the knife, but lots of them, right? Department of State. I'm assuming big chunks of the Justice Department, anything that has any kind of white collar crime related aspect to it, there'll be less money available for it. So this is really bad. Department of Agriculture. These are all going to get slashed. And it's going to hurt people. And Chuck Schumer gave a little speech. I don't have the clip of it where he talked about that. I think he made some really good points. I thought, was it Cenk? Yeah, the Young Turks, I was listening to them. Have on American people who are going to be harmed by these policies. You don't need a senator to tell you. You have the people themselves who depend on government programs to talk about why these are bad policy proposals by Trump. But Americans understand that they rely on government for services. And yet I was talking about this with my group today on the Hill. And yet, even there, the call to slash the budgets, to give people buyouts and reduce the employment at these agencies isn't hurting Trump's popularity particularly. And I want to explain why I believe that is true. And I said, look, people who work in private industry, people who are trying to make do with 1, 2, 3 jobs, many of them, they have no pension fund like the government workers do. Most of them, very few of them, are represented by a union, like many federal workers are. They don't have any job security, which federal workers have some job security. They don't get paid vacations. If they try to maybe they do, but if they try to take them, they might lose their job. So there's a lot of resentment in the heartland and elsewhere for these federal workers whose lives are in many ways better than theirs. So they're not going to shed any tears. Some bureaucrat in the Department of Agriculture is going to get their walking papers. Heck, I'm a farm worker and I can barely survive. I've inherited a family farm with 500 acres, and I'm in hot to Monsanto. I don't get any vacation time. I don't have a pension. Why should I care about these federal workers? Now you might say, well, they should. They're human beings. I agree. But they would respond, but no one cares about us. Who's helping us out? Certainly not the Democratic Party. Democratic Party wants to regain power. It needs to have a coherent, pro-worker, pro-environment, pro-peace message. If working class people felt, and if in fact it were true, it's not just a feeling, if the reality were that the party that championed their interests was the Democratic Party, they would be in power. But that's not the reality, and that's why they're not in power. Here's another reason. This was brought up by one of our group members today. Why so many of Trump's supporters don't really care if government agencies aren't being funded or if there's going to be massive job cuts. Because we've had the Department of Education now since, I think, 1970, something like that. During that time, when we have this agency that's supposed to guarantee, that's mission is to see that Americans are better educated than ever, our reading skills reached new lows. Now, I don't think those are directly related. That's correlation, but not causation, right? We've got this sprawling bureaucracy, the Department of Education, which is actually in many ways underfunded and has been. And we also are seeing American children with poorer reading skills. I don't think those two are one cause the other. But still, if you are going to have a Department of Education, shouldn't we have more educated kids? Shouldn't they be able to read? Now, I certainly can hear all the arguments. Well, as Republican tax cuts meant that there was less available for the Department of Education. It's true. But then why wasn't Trump, Harris, Obama, yeah, they raised taxes a little bit. Why didn't they figure out ways to really, really make sure that these agencies were fully funded and were pursuing and accomplishing the mission that they're supposed to? I'm not saying they didn't try. What I'm saying is this was never made clear as a centerpiece of the Democratic mission, the Democratic core goals that they would repeat over and over and over. Really easy, right? Every American deserves health care as a right. Every American deserves to get great education as a right. And here's what we're going to do accomplish those. The Democrat Party does not have that brand, and that's why it's losing. And it really shouldn't. Really doesn't deserve it. It is the brand that bailed out the big banks, not the in-debt homeowner. It's the brand that sent billions of dollars for an incredibly destructive war in Ukraine that left everybody less safe except for those that left dead. It's the party that talks a good game about democracy and then doesn't have primaries. Powerless Dems debate just how deep in the wilderness they are. I thought there was one quote from this article that really struck me. And, there's a real dispute. And I do, by the way, agree that this could change in a heartbeat. We get a depression. The wars start, ramping up again. We could easily see Democratic resurgence. But we'll just be on that roller coaster, that back and forth between Republicans and Democrats until you have a truly pro-labor party. And I don't see it ever being the Democrats. So therefore, we do need to go in a very different direction. But I thought that what Pat Ryan says is very interesting. At the core of the brand, Democrat brand, is weakened to the point that without members running against it in tough districts, we can't get to a majority, which is structurally untenable. So what he's saying is that we have some Democrats. I think what he would say is the brand is sort of a DEI brand, an AOC type brand, but that just cannot win in swing districts in some districts. So we have to go against that brand. We have to actually be speaking out against it. We have to have members who are opposed to each other. I don't think it's a terrible thing to have members who are opposed to each other by any means. But I think he gets it wrong. There is no real Democratic brand. Nobody really, they've been defined, right, as the party of DEI, I suppose. But that's not really what the Democratic Party is. The Democratic Party is really just an accumulation of mostly self-interested opportunists and some people who really, I think, give a damn and want to make life better, but who are very, very much themselves corrupted by the system. RFK Jr. running for, or he's actually the hearings right now, for Health and Human Services, whatever they call it, Department of Health. Remember what I said? Americans don't care about that stuff like AOC, he's a rapist, he's a Nazi. That's not, certainly the MAGA base doesn't care about that. So what does the New York Times do? What does the New York Times focus on? Caroline Kennedy's allegation, which I think is pretty well documented and probably true. She should know that her cousin's a predator. You know what? American public don't care. Most Americans' attitude is going to be, I want to get health care. I want better health care outcomes for myself and my family. The American public that celebrated Luigi Mangione for killing a healthcare CEO, You think they care if RFK Jr. is a predator? According to his cousin, they just care about whether they're going to get good health care. And I was pleased to see, I was watching some of the hearings where the questions were, what are you going to do about Medicaid? Medicaid has resulted in many Americans getting health care that they're very glad they have, that they appreciate, that they view as good. What are you going to do about that? And it kind of put RFK Jr. on the defensive. Apparently he said, I didn't see this, but apparently he said, yeah, we should negotiate for lower drug prices. So that's good. Those were good questions. That's where you want to push these nominees in the right direction, as opposed to what the New York Times does here, which is just to attack him for personal, really bad behavior. But let's say he is a predator. If he's a predator, arrest him. And if he's not, or if he's not arrested, then I don't really think it's the problem of the American people. Again, 240-242-5646. If you want to join me, just a little bit more. Actually, I just wanted to give you a positive ending, something that will help maybe those who either are feeling disillusioned with the Democratic Party or are disillusioned with me for being so critical. Here's AOC getting it right. Actually getting it right. And it's a shocker to me. And it's very little, and it's very late. But nevertheless, if I'm going to be bashing her for her hyper loyalty to the Democratic Party, for keeping for Biden than Harris, I got to give her credit where it's due. Here it is.
I think that it highlights ways that we can fight back.
That's
and
right.
One of the things that we need to do is to talk to people directly. Also, guess what? There need to be Democrats who walk the walk and talk the talk. There is an insane amount of hypocrisy. And the hypocrisy is what gets exploited to use the cynicism. And wherever there's a hypocritical window, for example, I think one of the most biggest examples of this is insider trading in Congress. Like,
dude, I don't know if I do I give snaps? I don't know what the kids do anymore, but dude. It is That's so crazy.
It's so crazy.
It's crazy.
All right, so when I first watched or listened to this and they're going on, it's crazy about the insider trading that the Democrats, remember Nancy Pelosi, full-blown proponent of congressional stock trading. No, it's not crazy at all. It's perfectly understandable. You're making a killing. If you're a Congress member, you have insider information, you're making a killing by trading on stocks based on what legislation is coming down the road and who's going to benefit from it, what particular drugs are going to be getting some kind of government subsidies out of your plan, or what is going to be what drug is going to be subject to drug price negotiation. Or whether we bought how many F-16s we're buying for Ukraine. Of course, but it's not crazy at all. It's just corrupt. It's pure, unadulterated corruption. But by saying crazy, she is minimizing, she's diminishing it and how bad it is and how evil it is. But she kind of makes up for that. So let me play a little more from this.
Crazy. I mean, and this is the thing. It's like people think that everyday people are stupid.
Also, why is she smiling? Like it's funny? Like there's something amusing about this? It's not amusing. It's awful. But she's right. This is something to decry. And it's hypocritical, and it's worse than hypocritical. It's corrupt. It's criminal. All but criminal behavior.
Do you all really think that people don't see this shit? Like,
they sit on a committee, they get information about a drug or a contract or a thing. They immediately make a call. The stockbroker changes things, and their portfolio swells.
Explodes. It explodes.
What are we doing?
And you're doing this on public trust.
Right.
On taxpayer finance, public facilities. Of course.
You're regulating the market that you're trading on.
Exactly. And
You
like
run
this-
the casino.
and then we're supposed to act like money doesn't only corrupts Republicans? Give me a fucking break.
We're lucky we're not in the same room.
All right, so I don't like the cursing. It's really immature. She's in her mid to late 30s now. But she just said, yeah, we're corrupt too. So I don't understand. If that's your attitude, AOC, why are you out there busting a hump over and over and over for these corrupt Democrats? Why did you go out there and say we need to reelect Joe Biden and then speak at the Democratic National Convention about how great Harris is? They're corrupt. See, this is the problem. You may even be willing to go on Jon Stewart and laugh and giggle about how your colleagues in the party are using, totally abusing the public trust. But what you won't do is say, yeah, we need something else. We need to go in a different direction altogether. We need a Green Party. And in fact, you attacked Jill Stein. So you're right what you said, AOC, but in the end, you're not fighting for working people. You're not fighting for your constituents. You're fighting for your party and its corrupt leaders. All right, I'll be back tomorrow.